I went to high school here, and then I moved away to Boston, and I went to a school called Berklee College of Music, and I studied music there for about 3 years, and then I was deciding whether or not I was going to move to New York and LA, and I decided that I was done with the snow and 6 months of winter, and I wanted the beach and sun every day. So I went over to, I moved to LA, and I've been there for the last pretty much 8 years, and that's where I met Eddie, who's from LA, and he's going to tell you a little bit about him.
Yeah, I was born and raised in LA, which is odd because everybody moves to LA, but he's actually from LA. Every time I tell people that, they're like, "You're from here? Wow!" But it's weird. I wasn't raised in the industry at all. I actually went to school for electrical engineering, and then decided I wanted to be in ministry, and then I went to the school of ministry for a year, and then after that, I was like, acting, cool. So I'm mostly an actor in LA. I do a couple shows at Disneyland. And so I moved out there. Well, I didn't move out there, but I decided to move to Hollywood from where I was. And so that's what I'm doing mostly is acting, TV commercials, stuff like that.
Yeah. So this morning, you know, we're kind of sharing being Christians in the entertainment industry, because a lot of the times when I come back, you know, people in Toronto or, you know, anyone kind of not from New York or LA will always kind of be like, hey, what's it like to be in Hollywood? What's it like to live in Los Angeles? Do you meet Brad Pitt, Angelina Jolie? Like, who do you meet? Tell me. You know, they all want to know. And, you know, I just kind of, I want to talk to you this morning. We want to talk to you just about legacy. And I kind of want to share with you, I want to just throw out there kind of like all the, let me get personal on this side too. But we want to kind of just, you know, talk about, share with you the idea and concept of what Hollywood is, and then what the real purpose of God putting someone like Eddie and I into a business like Hollywood. And, you know, Eddie and I actually met through a Bible study that's called Models for Christ, which is, you know, literally a Bible study for models working in the entertainment industry. And Eddie used to model.
It's not what it sounds like.
Yeah, it's not what it sounds like. But we both worked in the modeling business. You know, I'm there to pursue music, and Eddie's there to do acting and music as well. And so, you know, we've kind of both worked in all facets of entertainment in Hollywood. And, you know, I was blessed to be able to work as a background vocalist on X Factor last season, you know, working really close with Simon and L.A. Reid, Nicole, all the celebrities that came on. I've seen more celebrities in one day on that set than I have in my whole entire life. And it's just, you know, it's kind of, I think the glitz and glamour of it is, it's fun, you know, when it's the first time and you meet all these stars, but, you know, they're really just regular people that we've elevated, you know, to a certain place. And, you know, I think one thing that we've seen, especially with a lot of the friends that we've worked with, you know, there's a lot of our friends that are actors working. Eddie's been on, you know, multiple TV shows as guest star. You know, his show at Disneyland it's like a $10 million Broadway production that he was playing Aladdin for 6 years. You know, it was the biggest show at Disneyland. So, you know, it's just, that's all cool and that's all fun, but as we've been in LA and as we've been working in Hollywood, I've clearly seen God just put a call on his people to the city. LA is a very dark city by nature because, you know, it's the world of fashion and music and film and television. It's all run by people that are hungry for money and fame. And at most, you know, there's a lot of, you hear a lot of people talking about LA, like, oh, it's so superficial, and it's beautiful when you see it on TV because you see shows like The Hills and whatever, The House. I don't even know what shows are out there about LA, but you know, the stigma of LA is that it's very superficial and that it's very shallow. And you know, for the most part, I would kind of agree. Sadly, you know, it's a city that people come to pursue their dreams only for themselves. They're there to get more from me, whether it's to be famous or to be rich, ultimately to have lots of power, you know? And the struggle for us as Christians in the business is that we don't get sucked into that, you know? And that can be true for any business, you know, whether you work in finance or the corporate world, or you know, you're a doctor or you're a lawyer. I mean, I think the struggle it's a different struggle, but there may be a struggle for, you know, you to have this many degrees after, you know, when you graduate college, when you're making 6 figures and you own this kind of house and you drive this kind of car. You know, I think that's, growing up in Toronto, I knew that was, you know, driving a BMW in Toronto when you're 16 years old says something to all your friends in high school. You know, going to like Queen's University or going to the States for university tells your friends that, hey, I'm smart and I have money to do that. You know, and those things, you know, as kind of you just worked in an industry that had put so much emphasis on how you look, who you know, how much money you have, and what you do, you know, we've kind of just realized that all that stuff for the Lord is not important. But it is for sure a real struggle.
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous. Like when you're at a party, if the first question is usually, so what do you do? And then if your answer is not cool enough, then they leave. You know what I mean? If you're not like, oh, I'm a series regular on this TV show, then it's like, oh, okay, what's going on? It's like everything is so like, how can I further my career? And honestly, our business is tough. You know, there's no like funnel. There's no like, you go to school, you get a job, and you get promoted. It's like you hustle, you hustle, you hustle, and maybe nothing happens. You know, but the whole point, you know, when he's talking about people that are looking for fame and looking for money, we really, like, as Christians, we understand that it's all about identity. Like, people are searching for self-worth, for, you know, they want power not just to have power, they want power to know that they mean something in this world. They want money, they want people's opinions to be high of them, to know that there's somebody. And I think all of us struggle with that. I mean, it's idolatry. That's what it's called in the Bible, is worshiping something more than God. Taking something that's good and making it an ultimate thing. Like, it's good. I would love if you guys thought well of me. That's great. But it's not better than, it's not worth compromising my values or whatever in order to get that. And that's when we make that an ultimate thing. And I'm sure, it's so funny because I think people look at Hollywood and it is kind of an extreme example of idolatry, but it's the same thing that you guys are dealing with. It's the same thing. Like these people, you know, I just saw Johnny Depp on the street the other day, and then a week before that, Justin Bieber. That's your boy, right? Canada? You guys have Justin Bieber? Carly Rae Jepsen? Come on, I go with her a little bit. But anyway, you just like, these are just regular people, and of course, extreme circumstances, but I think for us, up-and-coming artists, people that are trying to do it, we get in these situations, we see, you know, Justin Bieber, and we're like, oh my gosh, he can do so much for my career, and we're like, I want to be this, and it's basically, we feel like idols are just nipping at our heels everywhere, you know, like, we see a cooler guy that has a cooler car. I'm sure you guys deal with that. And we're like, man, if I just had that car, man, if I just had that career, man, if I just looked like this, if my hair was just a little different, I was a little taller, whatever it is, it's all a lie. Because all these guys are doing the exact same things. These people that are in the top, you know, that we hang around with, they're just as insecure. Like, they put on the face when the camera's on. Man, I remember, I know some celebrities that I don't want to talk mess about because I've been convicted already. But there's one celebrity that you know is huge right now, and I kind of had dinner with her because I had mutual friends, and the woman is miserable. She's on top of the world, but she's rude, and I'm not even saying more, but I'm just saying, like, I couldn't believe it. This woman was on top of the world, and she's miserable. I mean, she turns it on for the camera and you see all that the glitz and glamour and stuff, but why is she miserable? Because what she wanted isn't what she thought she wanted, you know? And that's the awesome thing about knowing Jesus, is that we have Him. Like our identity is secure. Like the love of God has told us we're in. You know, that's what everybody wants. They want to say, I want to be in. If I have this car, I'll be in. I'll be good. If I look this way, I'll be in. It doesn't, it's a lie. You can't get there. And you know, that's why the Bible talks about contentment. I mean, it's not bad to have a nice car. It's not bad to do your hair. You know what I mean? Like, to put out a CD and it go well, that's awesome. So there's two aspects to it. There's one, when you don't have it, you want it. And you guys are gonna have to do the specific applications in your own life, but when you don't have it, you want it, you think that's gonna do it, and it's not. Let me just tell you right now, like, no matter where you get, it's always gonna be like, man, but if I just have one more, right, Chad? And the other one, which is when you get there, when you finally like get the successful career, get the car, then you try to find your identity in that as well. You're like, oh, I'm somebody because I got it, because I, got all the things. But are you? And and I'm sure you guys deal with it as well, because I think idolatry is everything. If you got idolatry down, you're perfect. You're not gonna be perfect, but I think in LA, it's rough. Like, it's like, man, that guy has a hotter girl than me. I'm just being real. And then, but you're like, it never ends, you know? And that's why, like, that's one of the things we were talking about. Like, what do we want to say today? What we want to say today is your identity should be firmly rooted in Christ. And His love surpasses any love that, you get rejected by a girl. It's just rejected by a girl. It's not my life is over, Because your identity is not in other people's opinions. Your identity is not in where you are in life. Yeah, do it, go. Pursue your dream, we're pursuing our dream, but we're not gonna, and we struggle with that. Like sometimes I gotta call you out, you gotta call me out, like, okay, yes, you're doing great, but are you finding your identity in this right now? Like, is Justice KO cool because he just got a hit? No, Justice KO is cool because he's loved by the Lord, and that's where his identity comes from. And I don't know, that's kind of what we're talking about.
Yeah, I wanna share with you kind of just my personal journey, because I'm built and I was raised, I have strong passion, I have strong drive, I have strong ambition, and I had a dream since I was 6 years old. I told my mom, I said, Mom, I'm gonna move to Hollywood one day. And sure enough, like, I go hiking at Runyon Canyon and there's that Hollywood sign every day, like I live 5 minutes from Hollywood over the hill. And how could I have been so sure at 6 years old that I was gonna move to Hollywood? Well, since I was a kid, I started playing the piano when I was 6. I started writing when I was 13. And I started playing out here in Toronto, just mostly at church events when I was probably around the same age. And then God took me to Boston, then He took me to LA, and then He took me around the world. And it's because since I was a little kid, I had this passion for music, and I had this dream. And as a kid, I always saw myself on huge stages in front of millions of people. How many people actually really play for millions of people? Probably from like YouTube. That's about it, probably. But that was the dream. And I'll tell you something. Probably for the first 10 years of my career, it was about me getting on the biggest stage, playing for the most people, being the biggest star, making the most money, being the best model, being the best singer, getting the best record deal with the best label, having the best looking friends. And it's kind of just like, I'll tell you when it changed. God took me through a season, probably about 4 years ago. And I'll tell you something else. For a long time when I was, growing up, I struggled with depression, probably for about 10 years. And for the first couple of years, I didn't even really know what it was. But I realize now that like God used a season of depression and a season of coming into like solitude in myself to get me quiet. And even though it was a very painful time at certain seasons, it got me to the place where I could choose two things, and I'll be real with you. I could choose to just end everything, because when you're in depression, sometimes you think like that. Or I could choose God, because God had shown himself to me since I was a little kid. And for that season, you know, I came to a place where I had just understood what it meant to surrender. And I think in our lives, God calls us to constantly surrender. And if you don't know what that means, when we surrender to who God is, we understand first that God is all powerful. He controls every part of your life. There's nothing that God hasn't already written or doesn't know what's going to happen. If you think that there's anything that happens in your life because you do it or someone else does it, that's not the truth. God has ordained everything in your life, and he has power and control over every part of it. And I have to believe that, and I do, and I live that out. But this is the thing, you know, I came to a place where I was like, Lord, I surrender. And I've constantly had to just do that. Lord, I surrender. I surrender this need to please people. I surrender this need to be affirmed by people. I surrender this need to have to look a certain way or dress a certain way or get a record deal or have a certain amount of money. I had to lay that all down, and that only came through a painful time of God taking me into a place of solitude where I was like, God, I can't do this anymore. And I don't even know that you can do it, but show me. And God made himself very clear to me, and took me into the book of Jeremiah. And in Jeremiah 29:11, we all know that verse. It says, "For I know the plans that I have for you, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future." And usually we stop at that verse. Does anyone know 12 or 13? Well, if you keep reading in the next two verses, God says, "For when you pray to me, when you call upon me, then I will hear you." And verse 13 says, "For when you seek me with your whole heart, then you will find me." And in the moment when I read that verse, probably for the first time, I was like, God, how many times have I just given you half my heart? Or 75% of my heart? Or just 99% of my heart? But God's like, when you give me your whole heart, all of it, every part of it, he will hear you. He will move supernaturally on your behalf. You know why? Because God, out of everything, just desires a personal relationship with you. And I didn't understand that. When I was in high school, when I was in college, it wasn't about that. It was about me. I was like, you know, God is like, I'm going to go to church, I'm going to lead worship, and then on Monday through Saturday, I'm just going to live however I want. Probably even Sunday night, I just live however I want. You know? But God's like, that's not good enough. I didn't create you to live 6 days like that in just like 2 hours with me. God's like, I know every hair, every strand of hair on your head. I know the heart that I gave you. I know the physical body that I gave you. I know the mind that I gave you. I know what you can do with your arms. I know how fast you can run. I know how athletic you are. I know how smart you are. I know how personable you are. And God's like, I have a purpose for you. Every single one of us in here. God's like, I have supernaturally ordained one unique purpose for you. For you. For you. And it's like, God's just asking you, he wants to get us to that place where we come to him and we're like, God, what do you have for me? And how do you get there? Your heart is aligned with your Creator. And what we're talking about, this idolatry, our church it's a church called Reality LA. And it's a little bit of worship and 1 hour of a message every single week. Most kids that come to the church are either in college or they're in college or they're like young adults, mainly 20s to 30s, and about 3,000 of these young people come with their Bibles in hand to church. They open it and we sit there and we listen to the word for an hour. You want to know why? Because the only way that we're going to know God is through His word. In this age where we don't hear God with our ears like they used to in the Bible, God has given us the whole, His living word, you know? And as I've read the Bible and as I've kind of looked into the Old Testament and read stories, great men of the Bible, David and Joseph and Abraham, and then you look at Paul and Timothy, as you've seen how God has moved supernaturally on their lives and taken them through the toughest, darkest seasons. Some of these guys, Joseph was thrown in prison for how long? 17 years by his own brothers. And he went through all that because God wanted to lift them up to the highest place in the land. But it took 17 years for God to get him to that place. And you look at so many different Bible stories, and you see that God works the same way, because it's the same God. And do I believe that God can work in my life like that? And I'll tell you why that's important, is because as we work in an industry that is, all the odds are against you. I'll say this too, being Asian in the business for the longest time was probably the biggest drawback. I met with Usher's label in 2006 and they were like, "You're super talented, we just don't know what to do with an Asian guy right now." And as the industry changes, you know, I've kind of worked in the industry for 14 years since I started, and it's like I may have to wait another 14, but it's like, so what? Is my importance on getting a record deal now? Because it was before, it was getting a record deal out of college so I could come back and tell all my friends, "Hey, I got a record deal." Yay. What does that do, you know? And it's like, it doesn't matter, but what we've kind of realized right now is that God has one purpose for you. He supernaturally wants to take care of your life. And, you know, in our business, it's kind of like, the only important thing is the relationship with Christ. Because I no longer walk onto a set on a modeling shoot, or at X Factor, or into the studio thinking, "Hey, Justin Bieber, what can you do for me?" You know what I go in there thinking? "Hey God, how are you going to use me to encourage Justin Bieber today? God, what do you want me to say to these people? How can I serve these people?" And you want to know why? Because it's not about me. Being in this industry is no longer about what Justice Ko or Eddie Kaulukukui can do, or is going to look like, or how much money we're going to make, or what magazines we're going to appear on, what movies we're going to be on, what TV shows, what record deals, what tours. It doesn't matter, because God has a greater purpose than that. And as we have kind of been in the city working with so many people, you know, we have an amazing group of friends that God has called, ordained, and anointing, but also testing into a season where He's like, "Now I can trust you to be my soldiers in the front line." And really just be able to, you know, get onto influential sets, you know, as we work on different things, you know, we meet lots of people, and that sounds all glamorous, but there's a greater purpose in that, and that's to get people who don't know the gospel and don't know Christ to save so that they can have salvation. And that's ultimately what it is. And this morning, I want to encourage all of you guys, wherever you're at in your walk. I left Toronto to go to LA with a dream, but that's not necessarily everyone's journey. I just want you to know that God has a very specific purpose for you. He supernaturally controls every part of your life, but ultimately, He wants to know you. He wants you to know Him, and it's all about a personal relationship with Him. And I'm going to bring up our team again. We want to just share this song with you.
And I wanted to say, what is vying for your worship right now? Like, what are the idols that are trying to grab at you? I mean, for us, it's you know, people's opinion, and you know, because people's opinions create jobs for us, or success of certain things. There's a lot of people doing crazy things. I got a friend that I just got a music video and I got like 7,000 hits over the few days. And then my buddy puts one up. First day he has 300,000 hits. Second day he has 1.3 million hits. By the end of the week he has 3.5 million. So I'm just like, oh, okay. And I got like 8,000. So I'm like, alright, that's cool. But then I'm like, wait a minute, what am I doing? What am I here to do? Has God called me to do this? Then let me do it and be happy. So we kind of figured out the idols that are trying to grab at us and help us worship. When you finally, I mean, look at all those kings in 1 Kings and 2 Kings and stuff where it was like, and they were great, but they didn't tear down the idols. They did all this, they were decent, but they forgot to tear down the idols. And so what are the idols in your life right now? Because when you tear down those idols, there's freedom. You can walk into a party and you don't have to worry about what people are thinking about you. You can step into your closet and say, what do I want to wear today? I don't care what other people think. You know, I mean, maybe we should at a certain point, but it's too crazy, listen to friends. But you know what I'm saying? There's freedom in Christ because of His love. His love has called us in. We're in. You know what I mean? So please think about right now, like what's trying to grab at you? What's saying, oh, worship me over God?